This is 1961. Officially, all of the public places in the South were segregated by race. On the bus, Greyhound bus or Trailway bus, blacks were relegated to sitting into the four seats in the rear of the bus. If those four seats were filled, then the black person had to simply stand up. And that was the law throughout the South. I'm in the 11th grade, and after we read about the civil rights movement, St. Augustine, of course, being a southern city, was segregated. And so me and two of my friends decided we were going to have a sit in at the local Five and Dime. At the last minute, they chickened out, if you will. And so there I was, sitting at the lunch counter by myself, scared half to death. And so that's when the news got out that Hank Thomas staged a one man sit in St. Augustine, Florida. In the 60s, early 60s, as a student at Howard University, we had sit in demonstrations in sympathy with the students in the South. And when we read about the students at Fisk University and North Carolina A&T, we would have sit-ins over at Maryland, which is right across the state line from D.C. And from that, I was arrested at Hyattsville, Maryland, and Sammy Davis Jr. posted my bail, got me out of jail, and when I read that the sit-ins were continuing in the South, that's when I decided to go south and join the rest of the group. The story of the Freedom Rides. Back in those days, blacks were required by law in southern states to sit in the back of the bus. So in the late 50s, early 60s, a group of students from Fisk and Howard University decided we'd had enough, and we were no longer just simply going to sit in the back of the bus. And that became known as the Freedom Rides. They wanted people, students of legal age, so that I guess the organization of CORE and the NAACP could not be accused of using juveniles. The 13 Freedom Riders represented the 13 original states of this country. When you're 19 years of age, you don't have good sense, and you don't have the sense enough to be frightened. And so I can say, no, I was not frightened. It was an exciting time. And it was in Alabama where the first violence was directed toward us. And that's when the firebomb was thrown aboard the bus through a broken window in the back because the mob could not get on the bus to brutalize us. For a very long time, all of us, the 13 of us, suffered from smoke inhalation. When the bus is on fire from the back, obviously we tried to get off the bus. I got to the front door, and the door was being held shut by three white men on the outside. And they thought, the three whites, that the bus was going to blow up. And so they ran, and that was the way we were able to get off of the bus. Two or three of them came up to me and asked me if I was all right, and I just kind of nodded my head. And then that's when I was hit, as it later turned out, with a baseball bat. knocked to the ground, and as a result, I had to have medical attention. When I found out that students from Fisk and Nashville, they decided to continue the Freedom Ride. I decided to rejoin them. And that's when we were arrested at Jackson, Mississippi. We were sentenced to 6 months in prison and taken to Parchman, Mississippi, where the prison was located. Parchman prison had a very bad reputation in terms of its treatment of blacks. We were told, and I believe it to be true, that we were driven past the cemetery where many blacks who had been killed at Parchman were buried. And so we didn't need another lesson as to what can possibly happen to us. My cellmate was Stokely Carmichael that particular time, and many of the other Freedom Riders from Tennessee State and Fisk were in prison at Parchman also. What we have today in America was not always the case. Our people were enslaved for over 200 years, and it was only in the late 50s and early 60s that we began to challenge the laws of racial segregation in this country. Several people were killed, lynched, if you will. So the freedoms that we enjoy today were very hard earned.